And this is where I was going to update you on the latest developments in the Trayvon Martin case and then introduce George Zimmerman's lawyer, Craig Sonner. But Craig Sonner, the courageous defender of George Zimmerman, who has been making the rounds on television since last week, doing softball interviews wherever he could find them, just walked out of our studio in Orlando, refusing to do this show, refusing to face my questions, because he knew these questions were not going to be the questions that he was facing everywhere else he went. He wasn't going to get out of here with an easy interview where he was going to be let off the hook with his lawyerly questions. And so, Craig Sonner has been the first guest in the history of this particular show to get scared, to be terrified, so terrified of coming on this show that he has literally run away. He's in our car right now, taking him home from our studio, afraid to face the questioning he would face on this show. Watch out for wherever Craig Sonner shows up next on television, because wherever he shows up next on television has an obligation to put him through serious questioning about what he's doing and what he knows, and the contradictions in the things he's already said on television. This is a lawyer who has said on television, I haven't even asked my client what happened. Then, on television, he has said, this is what happened. This lawyer is getting away with the craziest stuff any lawyer has ever attempted to get away with in this kind of situation on television, and he knew that wouldn't happen here. He would not get away with that here. And so he is in his car, running away from this interview, running away from what we could have gotten at if he would just stay here and answer simple, sequential questions about this case. But he's made his decision. He will not be back. Don't expect me to be able to get him back. I'll take him anytime. Anytime he can build up the courage to come here, I'll take him. I'll pre-tape him at any time of the day. He doesn't have to stay up late, whatever he wants. But I think we've just found out something tonight about the seriousness of Craig Sonner's ability to represent the complete innocence of George Zimmerman. In this case, the killing of Trayvon Martin is actually changing every day, including today. It's a lot for a lawyer to keep up with, and obviously Craig Sonner is unable to keep up with it if he knows at the end of a day like today he'd have to come here. The Sanford police chief decided, in fact, not the chief, there's a new chief there, an acting chief, but the Sanford police have made an obvious tactical decision. They've decided that they've had enough of the criticism from the likes of me and from the law enforcement professionals that I've had on this show and others who have called their investigation an exercise in rank incompetence the night Trayvon Martin was killed 29 days ago. And so the police have taken to a time-tested police tradition in a situation like this. They don't want to take it anymore, so you know what they're doing now? They are leaking what they believe is evidence that supports their foolish, unjustifiable position of allowing George Zimmerman to just walk free that night and not collect any evidence from him, not his gun, not his clothing, nothing from him on the night that he shot and killed Trayvon Martin. The big leak of the day was from the police, and it was later confirmed by Trayvon Martin's high school, and it was that at the time of the shooting, Trayvon Martin was suspended from his high school because of an empty bag that appeared to have once contained marijuana. Now, this revelation, of course, is relevant to absolutely nothing on the night Trayvon Martin was killed.
Even in death, they are still disrespecting my son, and I feel that that's a shame.
This family is hurt, this family is torn, and the Sanford Police Department needs to be held accountable. George Michael Zimmerman needs to be arrested. He needs to be put on trial. He needs to be given a sentence by a jury of his peers. We're not asking for an eye for an eye. We're asking for justice, justice, justice.
This is where Zimmerman's lawyer was supposed to join me. Let's see if his chair is there. There's his empty chair in our studio in Orlando, Florida. Okay, quickly. Here are some of the things I was going to ask him. Who is paying you, Mr. Lawyer? Who hired you? When exactly did they hire you? Does George Zimmerman have a job? Does he have any property? Does he own anything? Did you represent him when he was arrested for assault on a police officer in 2005? Were you his lawyer then? Did you represent him in the domestic violence case in 2007 when he was accused by his girlfriend of assault? Did you represent him then when she got a restraining order against him? You said Zimmerman was injured, a broken nose. Do you have photographs of your client's broken nose the night of that incident or even the day after? You said Zimmerman's clothes were got grass and all this evidentiary material on them during this altercation that you talk about. Do you have that garment? Can you show us what happened to it? Do you have photographs of that garment if you don't have the garment that night? Do the police have photographs that they have told you about, that they have shown you, that supports this so-called evidence? Do you have possession of the clothing? Your client was not injured enough to go to the hospital that night. You say that he sought some sort of medical treatment the next day. Do you have those medical records that you can show us what he was treated for the next day? And Joe Oliver, did you bring him into this case? Did your client have a conversation with Joe Oliver on Saturday that got him involved in this case? And did he have that conversation with Joe Oliver without you being a party to that conversation? Did you actually allow your client to talk to Joe Oliver without you participating? And if you did participate in that conversation, as you know, is not protected by attorney-client privilege, because with a third party there's no privilege on that conversation. And I could go on, and I am absolutely, obviously quite disappointed that Craig Sonner, the terrified now, cowardly lawyer representing George Zimmerman, has left that chair empty, run out of our studio, refused to come on this show just minutes ago when he decided that this was going to be too tough for him. So instead, joining me now is Charles M. Blow of the New York Times. Charles, you really brought this story to a level of mainstream media consumption that it had not reached before. Trayvon Martin, as a teenager in high school in America, may have tried and or possibly at one time possessed marijuana.
See, I don't see how that has any relationship, bears any kind of relationship to the case, because his body was drug tested after it was taken to the medical examiner's office. So if there were any drugs in his system then we would know that. But if we're going to start executing kids for trying marijuana, then the line's going to be pretty long.
Well, we would like to know from Craig Sonner how much marijuana Mr. Zimmerman has tried over the course of his life, too. Let's listen to Craig Sonner on the Today Show this morning.
I think that's all the evidence that needs to come out. I think that some of the things you've mentioned are not quite accurate, and I think when the evidence comes out, it will show that George Zimmerman was acting in self-defense in this case. And when the rest of the evidence comes out, the one fact we do know, and that I can disclose at this point, is that George Zimmerman suffered a broken nose, injuries to the back of his head, and signs of a scuffle, being grass stained on the back of his shirt.
That is the cowardly liar representing George Zimmerman. What would you, if I was going to invite you to ask him questions if he had the courage to stay in his chair? I don't know whether you scared him away or I scared him away. Something scared him away.
I'm going to take the credit.
I'll take the credit. What would you like to ask him at this point?
Well, I think the crucial point here is the initiation of the encounter, right? So all this other stuff really makes no difference whatsoever. The question is, the central issue is, if you start a fight and you're losing it, you don't have the right to claim self-defense. If the lawyer is saying that he has witnesses and the police department is saying that they have a witness that says not that there was a fight, I fully believe there was a fight, but that Trayvon Martin initiated that fight. That's real information that we as the public and Trayvon's family needs to know, because that changes the dynamic. However, if George Zimmerman initiates a fight starts to lose that fight and then starts to claim self-defense, that's a different idea. And what we have to this is more of a legal, analytical point. Can the concept of self-defense switch parties? For instance, I start a fight with you, you're winning. I, in the middle of getting my behind whooped, I start to say, oh, Lawrence is hitting me so hard that I now feel like my life is in danger. Can the concept of self-defense switch parties from me to you? And the other thing is, could Trayvon also have been covered under the concept of the stand your ground law? If a stranger follows you, who you can identify as armed, and the police department has said that he was wearing his gun in a holster on his waist. A stranger with a gun follows me, gets within armed distance of me. Do I then, under Florida stand your ground law, have the right to meet force with force?
Hey everyone. So for those of you that are interested in knowing more about the justifiable use of force based on Florida's stand your ground law, I was interested to know if this law actually applied more to Trayvon Martin than it did to George Zimmerman based on the circumstances. And according to section 776.012, it says use of force in defense of person. A person is justified in using force, except deadly force, against another when and to the extent that the person reasonably believes that such conduct is necessary to defend him or herself or another against the other's imminent use of unlawful force. It goes on to say, however, a person is justified in the use of deadly force and does not have a duty to retreat if he or she reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or another, or to prevent the imminent commission of a forcible felony. Well, it was never said that Trayvon was attempting to kill anyone, nor has it been proven that he committed any great bodily harm to George Zimmerman, or anyone else for that matter. So when George Zimmerman used deadly force, it was not permissible. That's what I'm reading from this. And therefore, he should not be able to use this law as a defense to the execution of Trayvon Martin. I would also like to say that some people are condemning this law, but Zimmerman was not working within this law. This is a law that should remain in effect. It is useful when used properly. Zimmerman was not protecting anyone, including himself, when he shot Trayvon Martin. I cannot say this enough. This kid was murdered, and I've heard everything from, well, he's 6'2" and he weighs this much and he wore a hoodie and he had baggy clothes, to look at the pictures that you're using. He's no longer that young. He was 17 years old. He was still a kid. He was still a kid, and the bottom line is, I don't care how much you want to twist the facts. He was doing nothing to warrant that attack. He was being stalked. He was being followed by a man he did not know. And I'll tell you something. If I see a man following me, I'm going to be very, very nervous. That's how kids get abducted. That's how it starts. Someone's following them, usually a man, and then all of a sudden they're snatched. That kid was scared. He didn't want to be the next kid on a milk box. Are you kidding me? And he wasn't supposed to put up a fight when some stranger comes out of nowhere? There are some sick, twisted people in this world who will try to justify anything, including murder, if that means wiping black people and especially black men off of the face of the planet. They will use anything to twist truths and justify unjustifiable acts. But I will not stand for it. And as long as I have a voice, I will use it to condemn those who insist upon villainizing this kid. I am only interested in comments that make sense. Even if you do not agree with what I say, if you make valid points, I will post them. If they are not valid, or you're just on some racist rhetoric, they will never be seen by anyone except you.